coming up in today's episode.
Separate from the conditioning that society and family give us. Was it the network? Was it a movie in the 70s? It was so freeing in that movie that everybody could yell out, "I'm not going to take it anymore." And that's the beginning of your awakening.
Welcome to episode 80 of Enter the Mind podcast, the most real talk, no nonsense podcast on the empowering of the mind. In today's episode, we'll be interviewing Indra Rinzler, astrologer and spiritual guide. Indra, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Robert. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and Kyra is a big fan of astrology, if I'm not mistaken, so I'd like her to start off this interview.
Once again, thanks, Indra, for coming on. I was actually super happy to see that you were involved in Vedic astrology, and this is like your interest, because I learned about it not too long ago, and I haven't gone deep into it, but I just thought it was so cool. Whatever day you were born on is like the chakra that it has to do with your life's like path, something like that. Is that correct?
You know, I never heard that one. So,
really?
But
really?
I mean, 7 chakras, 7 days of the week, it does sort of line up. It's sort of an energy thing, but I've never heard that particular that particular idea. Each day of the week is a planet, that I know. Monday, Moon Day, Sunday, Tuesday is Mars, Wednesday is Mercury, Thursday is Jupiter, Friday is Venus, and Saturday is Saturn. That I know, but putting them to the chakras, why not?
¿Por qué no? That's cool, but it's really interesting, actually. What's probably like the biggest thing that you learned about yourself through Vedic astrology that like helped you figure out who you are?
I just want to say that Vedic astrology is astrology of India, and the two astrologies have a lot in common. But like everything, there are a few subtle differences, which I won't go into particularly. But I like to say Western astrologers don't agree with Western astrologers, and Vedic don't agree with Vedic. So if Western and Vedic don't agree, it's kind of the par for the course, you know, that everybody's kind of doing their own thing anyways. But I would say, you know, there in Vedic astrology, there's a timing system called the Mahadashas, the Great Periods. And this particular teaching tells us that in 120-year cycles, each of the 9 planets we use has a time and it has a particular time when it's the most important planet in your life. And when I really understood this teaching more than 20 years ago, it was the kind of thing that I thought, I really want to share this with other people. And so for myself, to understand my own timing, that we have a 40-year cycle, an outward cycle. This would be the period of Mars, the period of Rahu, which is the south node of the moon, and the period of Jupiter together. And in 2006, I ended this 40-year outward period, and I went inward, 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 inward. I'm now 15 years into Saturn. And understanding that, of course, I knew it was coming, but understanding that it was happening, and understanding that most people would say, oh my God, what's going on? But I kind of knew the timing, and I knew, and in fact, I met my wife 3 months before I started this Saturn period, and she is incredibly Saturn, and she's helped me through this Saturn period. She vibrates at a very easy Saturn level, where Saturn was not necessarily my easiest planet and period to be in. It's easier later in life. Knowing about the periods is an incredible opportunity to learn about ourselves. The periods are long enough that at your guys' age, you might only have been in 4 periods. You know, you're maybe in your 4th period for your whole life at I don't know, 30s or 40s. And so when you change a period, it's a big deal. You know, in a 32-year period, there's only a month when that transition is happening within 32 years. And if you contact me 3 months before that period, I got to say that you're pretty aware of it. And I had a client recently who was changing periods in about 5 months. And I said, about 6 or 7 months ago, you could feel that you were changing periods. And she said, absolutely, 6 or 7 months ago. I can see it easily on the chart. The chart just spits out this information, and you could figure it out mathematically. I mean, you could do it without the chart, but The thing is that people know it intuitively. They know that there's a change coming up, that they feel different energy coming in, that they're going inward or they're going outward, or they're feeling to explore themselves, a sun period. And it's so people know, but they don't really know to put a name on it, but they know when I describe the energy, they do recognize it.
Does it feel like a feeling of relaxation or a feeling of uptightness, or?
Well, probably both. I mean, it depends what period you're feeling into. Going into the sun period, you might feel that you're ready to explore yourself. You're interested in taking on that career move. You're interested in exploring yourself more. You're interested in I gotta be me and out of my way, and you get more arrogant or more focused on yourself. In moon periods, you're working on your emotions. You might have a lot of ups and downs, and you're going, well, why am I feeling so emotional? And it's because that your emotion, your moon energy has been, it's like it might be like a full-time full moon. If I tell you, you're going to say, whoa, yeah, last year I didn't feel that way, but ever since it's been like a constant full moon. And that's how you interpret it, but you won't know if that's what's going on. That's what's so incredible about what I can share with people, is that I can enunciate what's going on for them.
I love that you traveled around the world and have given life readings for people to find more happiness. Am I correct?
Well, that's correct. I would say I'm interested in helping them to know who they really are. When they become who they really are, then the happiness will just flow.
Yes. Yes. So in all of your travels around the world, if you feel comfortable answering, your hardest person to like crack.
The hardest nut to crack, of course, is myself, and that one is with me wherever I go. But I was working with a woman one season in India. She was attracting some really tougher clients, and we had one fellow who was about 31 or 32 years old, and he was a stutterer. And he told us at the beginning that he had terrible relationships and not really much relationships with women, and was you could feel his unsettledness and desperation and just difficultness that he had. And so we went through the reading. We're going into childhood things, and so we started doing the same Mahadasha periods. I was working it with him, and I could pin it down, and I don't exactly remember what it was. I think it had something to do with Mars, but it was around 6 or 7 years old. And so we said to him, we think that there's something around 6 or 7 years old that caused this, that's we can feel, because there's intuition involved in this too. The intuition comes from the clients, that their higher self is telling you, ask questions about so and so. You understand that there's a high level dialogue when they're open, that they're having with you. So I said, there's something about 6 or 7 years old. I said, with your parents and family? He said, no, the parents and family were really good. I said, okay. So then we thought, well, what about at school? He said, let's see, 6 or 7 years old, school. Oh, well, there was this one. And we said, yeah, that's probably it. And so he had an experience that I won't go into that was very traumatizing. He hadn't thought about it, but it wasn't like he had completely forgotten it, but he didn't realize it was the cause. And when we said that's the cause, and we said da 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 out of that, and then we saw him, a week we saw him a week later, and he didn't stutter as much anymore. We saw a complete change. And for a lot of people, it's really understanding what's really going on and being ready to let it go, being ready to own it in order to be able to let it go and to release it so that you can go beyond. And he was ready to do that. He might not, at 15 years old, if we'd had the same conversation, we would have had the same result. But he was now at 31, 32. He was ready to be done with it. And once he could see that it was an external that made him feel overly sensitive, then when he let it go, then it was gone.
I find it amazing how we humans hang on to things for so long, and we forget that we're even hanging on to them.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we hang on to things that aren't even true. let alone the things that are true. I mean, they're not even our stories. Our parents says you need to get an education and you don't even like being in the school and you're not even like the subject you're in. It's not even your story. And so you reach an age where you're ready to let those things go, that they're really big in your 20s, and when 30s are not so big, and at 50 you don't even remember. Thank God.
Getting more in line with who you really are. Is that what you would say is the ultimate goal?
Well, it's to get in line with who you are, but it's to completely give it up. You want to be the best chef, but at that point when you become the best chef, if you're going to be the best chef, then you're going to let go of the idea of being the best chef. Because if you're always trying to be the best chef, then you're never going to find any peace. The ultimate is to let go of any of our personal needs and any of our personal history, and to just flow with what is, because it will come to you. Whatever you want will come to you when you're not pushing it away energetically. And so that's the ultimate. But the idea is to know yourself better so that you can know who you really are.
Is it the case then that when we're born and we're little, we're more aligned with who we really are, and then as time goes on and we have experiences, we deviate from that?
I like to tell this little teaching, as I say, that the baby 3 to 6 months old, you see the pictures, they grab their foot and they don't know that they're holding their foot, and they don't know that it's their foot, and they don't know that it's a foot, because it's all pre-concept. So they're holding this foot. And then a year later, mommy says, baby's blanket. Baby's blanket. And then 6 months later, the toddler says, my book, my blanket, my mommy. Misidentification has occurred, thinking that the blanket is ours, rather than using nouns, which would be objects, or verbs, which would be actions. We have a language based on pronouns, and so it becomes my blanket. And then we spend the rest of our life undoing that conditioning and relearning the identification of who we really are, not who we think we are.
Totally. Yeah, I definitely believe that language really influences our psychology and our experience of things. So what's the process look like to come back to who we really are?
The 4 doorways to conscious living. And so the first doorway is to learn to observe. That's to watch your own thinking, to watch your behavior, to watch how you react to how people are, and you watch how they're reacting to how you are or how they think you are. The idea is to get out of the movie of your life and to get into the audience, to be an observer of that movie. The second doorway is to let go and release what doesn't serve you. And then the third doorway is you love yourself. And then the fourth doorway is you live in the moment. So if you're living in the moment, then you love yourself. And so how do I love myself? Well, you let go and release what doesn't serve. And we spend an awful lot of time there. That's like 95% of it, of the work. And so how do we know what to let go and release? Well, we just observe our own life, where we get triggered, where we have tension, where we have emotion, where we're lackadaisical. What one day I made up this phrase, do you brush your dog before you go to the park or when you come back from the park? And that'll tell you something about you. Is it more important that the dog look good when you're going to see people, or is it more important that the dog has everything out of its hair?
Self-love has come up 3 episodes in a row, I believe. So we're on a hot streak.
Yeah, well, self-love is a human theme right now.
You mean in the year 2022?
No, not particularly 2022, but just the smallness that we've experienced for centuries and millenniums is that we're not good enough. We need to change. We need to do better. We're not doing the right thing. We're not taking care of ourselves. The guilt and greed and small-mindedness and blame and shame. I mean, these concepts have been rampant and growing for the last 5,000 years. So in this particular time, the ability to be able to love ourselves, to see us at our highest, this is the work that we're doing right now for the next couple thousand years.
No, that's a perspective if I ever heard one. When people thinking about yesterday and tomorrow, how about 5,000 years ago?
I had to go back to 5,000 years because I spent over a year, maybe even 2 years, studying the history of astrology at a point about 10 or 12 years ago. In order to help people. I had to understand how we got here and what it is. And I used to say 50 years ago when I moved to the country and we lived on 80 acres in Southern Oregon, we had no electricity, we had running water, we cooked on a wood stove. We bought a saw to cut wood and that lasted maybe an hour. When we had a phone, it was a 4-digit phone number. It's like we went back to the 1870s. I kind of wanted to do that, even to touch into it in order to understand why are things the way that they are right now, and why, and how did we get here, and what do I need to understand about it for my own growth.
So what was the big takeaway from that?
Growing up in New York City and Manhattan, I kind of needed to get back to the land, and I needed to get my roots, to get into the quiet and to get into the peacefulness, and to take things on in the clarity of whether they're worthwhile or not, rather than the stories are involved. I've stayed out of most of the traditional teachings, particularly around astrology and Enneagram, my modalities that I teach, because I don't want to pick up the groupthink, because I want to understand it from my own point of view, from what feels right for me, not egotistical point of view, but I want to take it down to the pure energy and then say what's important for me and what isn't important for me. What do I feel is true and what of it is just nonsense that's been added on?
Yeah, I can see that. There's definitely a groupthink phenomena going on, and it's making me wonder. I mean, does everyone at some point in their life need to kind of venture off on their own and go in the forest in solitude and kind of?
Yeah. Well, I don't think everybody needs to do that in this life, but I think that there comes, I mean, if we're reincarnate, there comes a life when that may be a big theme for you. It may be, there may be a moment, I mean, we maybe have all had a moment, even if it's everybody leaves us at the pool, or you're at a, what do you call that, a all-in-one resort, and everybody leaves the pool to go drink, and it's quiet and there's a bird singing, the sky's changing, and it's a wow moment. And it could only be a split second, or it could be 5 minutes, and you could go really deep and you could never be the same from it.
Do you have any daily routines where you seek solitude?
Yes, I have a meditation practice in the morning and in the evening. I also have a daily walk. I do a 40-minute walk, and I think that that's a little bit of the same.
Any tips or suggestions for people that haven't really incorporated that yet into their lives?
The suggestion is don't give up. It may not be the right time. You may be in those 40-hour years, and it's not as easy in the 40-hour years, especially if you're an extrovert. And so it may not be your time yet. So the point is you just haven't done it yet. And so your time may come. And if it isn't this life, that's okay too. It may be the next one, if there is a next life. And it may be that you didn't need to do that. And that's okay too.
I feel like the work that you do is quite important. You travel to all of these countries, you help people. When you go in the grave, are you going to be like, my legacy was fulfilled, I gave everything that I got? Or is it kind of more like, this isn't my legacy, this is something that I am doing on earth that I'm happy and passionate about doing?
It's not that it's important or not important. And it's not about waking people up. It's about that I'm doing what I need to do for myself. And so I'm going to leave, hopefully, that I gave it my all, but it isn't about reaching a particular goal, because reaching a particular goal is never satisfying, because whatever goal you reach that you had, then you make another goal. And so what is the goal that you can make that is the end goal? Not the end game, but the end goal. What is the one that you don't need anymore? Food is really good, but you get hungry. Intimacy is good, but then it's what about next time? You get the house, but then you want it to be bigger. And so what is it that makes it so that you get off that wheel? And what it is to find a peace within yourself. And so it doesn't really have anything to do with anybody else. The purpose of relationship, the purpose of all this doing, is to give us the mirror back as to what we're attached to and what we're holding on to, what positions we're holding. And so the accomplishment, it can be that I've given my all, and will I get to the last door? I'm not sure that there is a last door.
on and on and on and on.
And so the legacy stuff, if I understand you, I think what I think is that the same as purpose. I hear a lot about purpose. Is that what you're talking about?
I feel like purpose is different.
Okay, well, what I find most of purpose is about ego. It comes from ego. There may be things that we're here to learn, but I don't think that this good and bad. I think we're anthropomorphizing a lot of things that aren't really actual. I think with that that we put God on a throne because we have kings on a throne, but I'm not sure that God, if there is a God that would sit on a throne, I'm not sure that if that's what gets him off, he's not really a high God. That's not the biggest goal going, is to live on a throne. I think we anthropomorphize that and many other things. And so my legacy, and maybe this is what you're talking about for me, I think about that the things that I've learned, wanting them to be left so that people can pick up on them. And there's some books yet to be written. I'm a bit of a late bloomer. And I could see that in my astrology chart. So it's not a problem. It's just the way that it is for me, and it serves a purpose. I don't know what the purpose is. I don't need to know what the purpose is.
What does spirituality mean to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Spirituality to me means beyond the physical plane, and I don't mean spirits as such. I mean, ghost angels. It's not things that I work with, particularly entities. I don't really work with that so much either, but the spirit in terms of things that are more than what you see. The idea that when you walk in a room, there's more there than what you feel, and so that's the spirit. And I think spirituality, when I first started working, studying it, because I think we called it spirituality back then. I think it was more than about learning systems. And I think it was about understanding more about how life is and how life can be and what am I doing here, these life questions that you're talking about. And I would say, that now spirituality to me is much more about, a divinity in the sense of a power that's beyond mind. It's about surrendering my own power, surrendering my own ego, surrendering my own needs and desires, because they don't really satisfy me. They're momentarily satisfying sometimes, but they are not long-term satisfying. And so spirituality to me is about connecting more within my true essence of who I am, and living from that rather than from living from this personality.
So much distraction on the surface, so much illusion.
Yes, and that's the game. It's hopscotch, where to step and where not to step. Somebody's saying, I love my dad and he wants me to be a lawyer, but I don't even like watching lawyers on TV. It's everything I'm against. And it's like, how do you work through that landmine? And how you work through it is that it's about, he wanted to be a lawyer, and all he can do is project that onto you because you're the person he always wanted to be. And so he's asking you to do that. And so how do you honor him? You honor him by saying, I love you, Dad, but I love me too, and I can't be a lawyer. And even if you've dropped out of law school 3 times, or you've already been a lawyer for 15 years, whatever point you get to see, the truth is that you're trying to please somebody else, and that there becomes an age where that, for many people, where that doesn't work anymore. I had a client who was about 60 that talked about the love of her life. I didn't mention this to her. I kind of thought about it later, but that's a very weighty story. That's hard to live up to. She needed to make her the love of her life him, and that was pressure. One time my wife said to me, my man, and we sat with that for about a week or two, and that was just absolute chaos, because it made so much expectations and needs, and I I'm her man, but this label, you understand, this label of my man or the love of my life are really weighty weighty to put on other people, that you're not in the moment anymore. You're in this story, and it gets to be built into marble and concrete. It's like Rome crumbling with the earthquake, and all of the marble stuff falls and all the columns fall. It's like it's a weight. You understand what I'm saying? It's very hard.
Oh yeah, but that's what we encounter. We're bombarded with it every single day, nonstop. We're bombarded with language and ideas and concepts.
We are. And so what spirituality is about is to see through that, is to be able to learn what is healthy for you and what's not healthy for you, and to figure out, to get enough distance, whether it be taking a seclusion in the forest or going away for the weekend to the beach, or whatever it is to find a place where you can find peace with that, and figure out what do you really think, separate from the conditioning that society and family give us, from other ideas, to be able to stand up alone and say, I don't believe, I remember that, was it the Network? Was it a movie in the 70s? And it was something about TV, and everybody opened their windows and shouted out, I'm not going to take it anymore. And it was so freeing in that movie that everybody could yell out, I'm not going to take it anymore. And that's the beginning of your awakening. It isn't about sitting with the Buddha part of the awakening. You got to wake up a bit before you sit with the Buddha. By the time you're sitting with the Buddha, you've already got some really good karma, and you've already been down the road a while. But I'm not going to take it anymore, that you're willing to open your window and shout out, I'm not going to take it anymore. This is the beginning of health.
Yeah, awesome. I feel like, in a way, I feel like we're kind of just scratching the surface, but I feel like this stuff, it really is resonating with some of my recent experiences. So Indra, if people want to find out more about you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, I have a website, Indra Rinzler, it's all one word.com, and that tells you a lot about some about me and a lot about what I do and can offer. If people are interested to write, my email is indrarinzler@gmail.com. And if people have questions or want to say hi, I'm happy to connect with anybody that's interested.